Well, there is also a question, isn't there, about what should happen to Andrew next, and will he ever confront and try to prove his innocence, if indeed he believes he is. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Gloria Allred, who's a women's rights lawyer at Allred, Morocco and Goldberg, and she's represented victims of Jeffrey Epstein and joins me now. Gloria, good to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me. It's an interesting one now that the Democrats are calling for Andrew to make himself available to questions, to tell everything he knows about Epstein. They're not accusing him of anything, but they're saying you were clearly there and you clearly knew something. What do you think the odds are of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor actually doing it?
Well, I think the most important thing that should happen next would be for King Charles and Camilla to encourage Andrew to volunteer to speak to the United States Congress, the House Oversight Committee, which is investigating Jeffrey Epstein, and he could volunteer to come before them to answer questions. It's clear that because he resided at Jeffrey Epstein's home in New York as a guest for a certain period of time, and also apparently was on Jeffrey Epstein's jet, which some people call the Lolita Express, and also because he reportedly also resided at some of the other homes of Jeffrey Epstein at other locations, perhaps at the ranch that Jeffrey Epstein had, or at Little St. James Island, that he knows who was there. He could see whether there were young girls there. He could have asked them, what were they doing there? Why weren't they in school? Did they have jobs there? What was happening there? Who were they with? Were there men at parties where they were? Were there rich, powerful, famous men? Did he see them with any of those men, engaged in any manner with them? There are lots of questions. In other words, he could answer. He could still say, I don't know anything. I don't recollect Virginia Giuffre. I did not see a crime being committed. I didn't commit any crime. But still, of course, he was at a crime scene because there were underage girls that were being sexually abused in the Manhattan house or some other locations. He could say, I never saw it. I didn't know anything. I saw no evil. I heard no evil. I was not engaged in any evil. But whether he will do it, which is your question, I don't know. He should be encouraged by His Majesty to do it. That would be the right thing to do. That would be the moral thing to do. And then it'll be up to him as to whether he decides to do it. I don't know whether the committee would subpoena him, but certainly he could volunteer, as many people would, even if they're not a prince or a former prince, just because they would want to help find out who was at a crime scene and who might be guilty of abusing children.
They can't compel him, though, can they, it appears? Where does he stand on Virginia Giuffre? I mean, tragically, she took her own life, so he no longer has a living accuser, at least not her. Where does that legal case stand now? Could that ever be resurrected, or does he need another accuser in order for there to be an actual criminal case against him?
Well, if you're talking about a criminal case, I think there would need to be an accuser. Otherwise, if there's no victim, there's not going to be a case. Or if there's no victim who's willing to testify, there's no case. There could be a civil case, depending on in which state it's alleged that a crime occurred, and on what date and what the laws are of that particular state. For example, with Virginia Giuffre, there was an extension of the law for adult victims of child sexual abuse in New York And I was involved also in lobbying for that extension of time so that victims could have more access to the courts. And she took advantage of it, Virginia Giuffre, because she was 17, a minor under the age of 18. So she was within the time period called statute of limitations to be able to sue, and she did. That case was settled, as you pointed out, or your guest did, that the Queen contributed to that settlement, although she was not required to do so. It may be that he settled it at that point because he didn't want to have to give his deposition. That would have been in the discovery stage. He didn't want to have to testify under oath, so he settled it before he would be required to testify under oath. And it may be that he won't want to testify under oath before the House Oversight Committee either, where he could be asked questions. He would have a duty to tell the truth, and maybe he just doesn't want to have to answer those questions. But we won't know unless he's asked. Although he could volunteer, that'd be really good for his reputation if he would volunteer to testify.
Yeah, they're saying he could
That would be
testify
good.
on Zoom, basically. He could testify from here with a lawyer present if he so wished. He wouldn't even have to make the journey. Can I just ask you, while I've got you here, talking about the victims, the many victims of Epstein and the cabal of disgusting paedophiles that he surrounded himself with, the Epstein files have yet to be released. Do you think they ever will be? I mean, my concern is that they're in the hands of Kash Patel at the FBI at the moment. Are we ever going to see the truth? Are the victims ever going to get the justice that they deserve?
Well, that's the key question. And of course, I've represented 27 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And there is a battle. It's a political battle now in the United States Congress. There appear to be enough votes if the newly elected Democratic congressperson from Arizona is sworn in.
Yeah.
Because she said she will cast the vote for the discharge petition, in other words, for the files to be released. Of course, the United States Department of Justice doesn't need a vote in Congress to release the files. They could do it voluntarily. That's been pointed out many times by federal judges. But since they have to be forced to do it because they won't do it voluntarily, then they need the vote. So I think it may happen. By the way, I never call Jeffrey, I mean, it's up to you and everyone else. A lot of people call Jeffrey Epstein a pedophile. I don't. Because a pedophile is someone who is attracted to children. That's not a crime. It is a crime to molest children, sexually abuse children. So I just call Jeffrey Epstein a child molester, a child sex trafficker, because I think that focuses on the harm to the child, which I think is most important.
I agree. I totally agree with you. Gloria, fascinating to talk to you. I've got so many more questions I could ask you. Maybe we'll do that another time. Thank you so much for joining me. Gloria Allred there, a women's rights lawyer at Allred, Morocco and Goldberg, and she has represented 27 victims of Jeffrey Epstein.